I like that. Can't ride your bike out of course.
Look at what we found today.
A little like old Sam Pit badass. So it's a little bit bigger than the light bay and a little bit smaller than the ultra bay.
You can really lean over on those Shinkos a lot more than you think you'd be able to. Toot my own horn, just schwack my piccolo or anything, but I think for one day's progress of popping the wheel up about a few hundred, maybe a few thousand times. Very curious what, oh, there's another cut through right there. I've enjoyed each and every one of the spirited 700 miles I've put on the E-Ride 3.0. I've had it on the road, off the road, beeping at me on the side of the road. And now is the time. This is the video. If you're in the market for an E-moto, particularly an E-Ride, and you're looking at the SR, the 3.0, the 2.0, maybe even their mini version, or maybe you're looking at some of the competitors like the Talaria MX-5, or you want something more powerful like an Altis Sigma or a Ventus 1 Plus. How does the E-Ride 3.0 stack up in 2025? The pros, the cons, and everything in between that you're going to get in the user experience. Quick disclaimer to my audience, this bike was not sent for review. I did pay $5,500 for it, damn near, which is something to keep in mind. Whenever you see the sticker prices, the MSRP on all of these E-motos, you're gonna just, in the back of your schnoggin, add another $300 to $500 on there for tax and shipping. So keep that in mind when we are mentioning some of its competitors like the Ventus 1 Plus, which is a $6,600 bike, I believe, but delivered, you're looking at about $7,200. So that is about $2,000 more expensive than the bike that we are talking about and reviewing here, which is the E-Ride 3.0, which was the dominant E-moto for, it had a good reign for a couple of years where it just shoulder checked the Surron and the Talaria MX-4 with way more power out of the gate, especially in the E-Ride 3.0, which has 15.8 kilowatts of peak power, which is goddamn ridiculous. Furthermore than that, they didn't skimp out on any of the components such as brakes or suspension. You're bouncing around on fast ace. The tires, those are Shinkos. They're going to perform good for you on and off-road. I said good, not great. If you want to kick ass off-road, get yourself some dirt bike knobbies. You want to be a slut on-road and be able to lean over and knee drag? Supermoto is what you're looking at, sister. But I've got to say, the stock tires, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's an entire section for just the rubbers. They're damn good. They're what I would have chosen for this particular bike, and that's the main reason that I actually got the E-Ride 3.0. A lot of the tiny parts or components that I would have upgraded, such as pegs or a stem lock and a high-rise bar, is already included on the bike, which is fantastic. I did end up going with a Warp 9 3-inch rise bar as opposed to the 2-inch rise E-Ride bar, but the out-of-the-box ergonomics are still very upright and comfortable even for a taller rider. This video is going to be broken into timestamps or chapters for each part or component of the bike, and feel free to jump around. But if you are in the market for an E-Ride, you should probably watch the whole damn video, not just to get my view minutes up. We got to get those view minutes up, but also because I'm going to cover a lot of issues, personal user issues that I haven't seen mentioned anywhere. And by the end of the video, you should be able to make an educated decision if the E-Ride is the right E-moto for you. So first of all, why the fuck get an E-moto? What is an E-moto? Why would you get one? Well, it's the most versatile little bike you're ever going to see because it's about the size of a mountain bike, 4 times as heavy, but people can't tell that just by looking at it, especially when you keep the stock Shinko tires, which make it look not very threatening when it's barreling down a sidewalk or bike lane. When you have some dirt bike knobbies on there or supermotos, it does transform the look of the bike to make it look more badass. It looks cooler, but it also looks more menacing and more likely for you to get pulled over. In that regard, I've ridden past many sheriffs in my little riding vlogs. I ride on the road, off the road, bike lane, in the main vein, pretty much wherever the hell I want, and I'm respectful when I'm riding. I've had no issues, but if I do get pulled over, I've got my my license. I've got a motorcycle endorsement. No license plate. The bike I'm riding doesn't have a VIN number or anything. It's a off-road use only bike. I'm a slick talking bad boy and a disabled veteran, so I'll probably be able to, you know, sweet talk my way out of getting my bike impounded. So an E-moto looks like a mountain bike more or less when it's going down the road, but they can go about 60 miles an hour out of the box. At least the model that we're reviewing here today can. Don't let the speedometer fool you. That says 67, but you're actually doing 59 to 60 miles per hour. That pissed me right off. That's a con for sure, is that the speedometer is very inaccurate. The faster you go, the more inaccurate it is. It goes from 3 miles off to 7 off, that makes a big difference when you're rolling in traffic. But when you ride them, the performance is closer to an electric dirt bike than that of a mountain bike. It looks like a mountain bike, so you can really get away with riding it in a ton of places that you shouldn't really be able to, but just don't be an asshole. Depending on what area you live in, you should be absolutely good. I can make an entire video on the whole gray area and the e-bike ban and all this stuff. The area I live in, e-motos aren't even a really big thing. And I still see people riding around like side-by-sides and gas dirt bikes and stuff, so you can really get away with riding these things around. Now, the buying process isn't too bad once you find out where to actually buy one of these suckers. Now, I almost got bent over a barrel and taken for a ride that I didn't buy a ticket for. A scam. Almost gave my credit card information to an unreputable company because when I Googled Eride Pro, the first 2 results, which were sponsored on Google, that's a bad sign right there, sponsored, just go ahead and skip over those, were both scams. I typed in, is this a reputable company? And the first result said, absolutely no. Make sure you don't give your information. Now, sharing my screen, I am going to show you the reputable official manufacturer's website. It is Eride Pros with an S at the end, plural. They're more than one professional. It'd be professional if you could see me in the webcam. There we go. And if you come over here to shop, you are going to notice in their E-motos that all of their models did increase in price about $400 to $700 a few months ago. This is due to tariffs, import duties, and whatnot. I was lucky enough to place my order literally 3 weeks before the tariffs increased the prices. My base price was $5K, I believe, and out the door shipping and all was like $5,500. Now starting price $5,800. Out the door and everything, you're looking at probably about $6,300 for this bike. And then keep in mind when you're looking at something like the Ventus One Plus that says I'm a $6,800 bike, it's really like a $7,300 bike. So these are not cheap bikes by any means, but with these electrics, they should last you a long fucking time because there's really not much routine maintenance. Clean and lubricate and tension the chain, and you don't have to worry about carb jetting and plugs and belts and hoses and, well, there's a belt, but anyway, you get my point. A gasser, it's a lot less maintenance. You're gonna browse the models and look at the key tech specs and find out what's up your Diagon alley, but when you go to purchase, you are going to go to one of the major reputable vendors that have been around for a while, such as Rev Rides, Ronster Rides. Popping up on screen here are a couple of reputable e-bike vendors that have been around for a while and tend to not shaft people. Now, while I'm here, I do want to talk about something I am very concerned about, and that is a lack of a customer support system. You come over here to warranty, you fill out this form, which I did because I had an issue with my front brake where it was completely squishy McGushy. I ended up having to bleed it myself. Some people say you don't bleed the brakes on this bike. I did, and it ended up gaining pressure back. Anywho diddly-you, I filled out this fucking form and I sent it into Eride and I never got a response. It was incredibly professional. It had my order number from Rev Rides, the date purchased, the exact diagnosis of what the problem was, and they never responded to me. And what is a furthermore issue than that, just being ghosted by the company you bought a $5,000 bike from, is the fact that the reliability, the quality control on these bikes is pretty damn bad. I would give it about a 4 out of 10 as of now. You will read so many horror stories about my controller just cooked itself, or I'm getting this error message on my 1-week-old bike. Eride's been around for a while now. There are several newer companies to the e-moto market that seem to be doing better right out of the gate with quality control and reliability. Eride just ain't that. It's not the worst, but it is nowhere on the level of something like Surron or Talaria, which has a very good quality control reputation. So that's scary that there's already a bad quality control reputation, that there might be some stuff broken on your bike, and then when that happens, customer support, the warranty form, when filled out and properly turned into the respectable channels, doesn't get you anywhere. As for the unboxing experience, this was my second bike in a box. I had a gas TT250 dirt bike that I actually commuted to work on for a while. That came in a big wooden crate or pallet. This came in a cardboard box that was secured quite nicely, and assembly was actually very simple in comparison to the ETM RTR from Electro & Co., which you have to install the rear shock and then move the front caliper to a different position. The E-Ride, you do have to put the front wheel on, and the handlebars are off, but it was a pretty quick and easy assembly process. It was my first E-moto, and I was able to get up and running with that sucker very quickly. I was also very excited, so I was assembling fast. But nothing was damaged, everything was packaged well. I got a free pair of grips and a seat cover from Rev Rides, which is where I ordered from, but they were mixed match colors. They're like red grips and a white seat cover. They just kind of gave me what they had on the shelves. As for cosmetics, I do think that the E-Rides are some of the better of the Surron style looking bikes, things like the Falcon, the Mantis, the Talaria, the Dirt Goat, the Arctic Leopard. There's so many of them I could keep sputtering out, but I do think the E-Ride frame design looks super slick. Now with the stock Shinko tires, which are more of a street slash dirt, do a little bit of everything but master of none tire, the bike looks pretty not menacing, pretty non-threatening going down a bike lane or even on a sidewalk. But changing just the tires dramatically changes the look of the bike. It goes from looking pretty inconspicuous and non-threatening to looking kind of menacing when you put some dirt bike knobbies on, like what comes on the SR right out of the box, or with supermotos, it also looks like a freak beast. But these stock tires, which are a Shinko clone, they have lightning bolt logos on them and they're specific to the E-Ride company. But clone, the compound's like virtually identical to the Shinko. This is the model right here that a lot of E-Riders switch to as an aftermarket option. Comes right out of the box with those bad boys. As for brakes, you do have 4 piston calibers on thicker rotors than the last model and decent stock pads with good aftermarket options. They run DOT4 brake fluid, so Department of Transportation, which is what's inside of motorcycle brakes, not so much that mineral oil that you get in those mechanical disc brakes of lesser mountain bikes. But you're going to see some big handlebar mounted reservoirs and some big tubes wrapped neatly around the front fork. They have good stopping power, decent lever feel and adjustment, but there is no tutorials on how to bleed them. There is a bleed port, although online some forums are saying that these brakes don't require bleeding. All you have to do is remove the reservoir cover and pump the brakes a couple times. Wow, if it were that simple to get air bubbles out of your brake lines, that'd be so cool. But there is a bleed port on the side of the calipers on these bad boys, and I was able to go from no brake feeling in the front brake, which happened about 100 miles into the bike. I just completely lost front brake feel. No real explanation as to how that happened. I guess just riding on some trails, got some air bubbles up in the line. I don't know, but I do know that I watched a YouTube tutorial on how to bleed it, and I bought a kit on Amazon, and they are now back in full effect. And along those lines, the brakes do grab and bite very strong. You get tons of stopping power, which works in combination with the grip of the stock Shinko tires, and that is definitely one of the pieces of praise is the brakes. Along with the suspension, which we're about to roll into, you have fast ace, which feels good, but sometimes I feel like it's a little bit too soft for my grown billy goat body. I was 200 and something pounds when I got this bike, and I'm down to 180, so that's good. I haven't really noticed the bike feel any less springy underneath me, but fast ace adjustable suspension, which is a big upgrade over the E-Ride 2.0, which there were a lot of complaints of the forks just simply blowing out in the first 100 miles of not even that hard riding. I got 700 miles on this bad boy, and I've been pummeling and punishing it on trails, on-road, off-road, side of the road. No issues yet, but when the forks or monoshock in the back do blow themselves out, I'm going to use it as an excuse to upgrade to some of that, one of those sweet EXT Arma MX Italian handcrafted suspensions that all the E-moto boys rave about. As for comfort and ergonomics, you do have a relatively upright position for an adult rider because you do have high-rise bars, 2-inch, not as high as the Warp 9s that are 3-inch I installed, but compared to a lot of its competitors, you already have a direct stem lock and a 2-inch medium to high-rise bar, so it does give you that upright position, and then you have large foot pegs, which are really good for street riding. You're not going to dirty up your Jordans or Crocs or anything, so I really do like the ergonomics right out of the box, but putting on the Warp 9 3-inch bars makes you even more upright, and I changed the seat, which I do strongly recommend. Although it's not very easy, I did have to get an adapter because this is a Surron seat. There's a much bigger aftermarket for Surron parts, so I was able to get this plush seat and extended rear fender, which were two big complaints I had of the stock bike. The stock front and rear fender don't do shit when it comes to blocking debris splittering and splattering up on you. So if you're riding in the rain, you're getting water all over you. You pin the throttle in the mud, congratulations, you just got roosted up your back. The fender doesn't fend off things things very well, so I got an extended rear fender. And this plush seat is leagues better comfort-wise, and grip actually, over the stock seat. I did have a seat cover on for a while, and that was cool and all, but I do prefer this actual aftermarket seat. I will have the adapter and the seat itself linked in the description below. Tire-wise, you're sporting a couple of Shinkos. That's a 275 19 in the front and a 300 wide 18 in the rear, so giving you a little more meat in the back, which does kind of limit your aftermarket options as opposed to a 1919 setup, but there are plenty of aftermarket wheel and tire packages or bundles out there. The stock tires are phenomenal. In fact, I think I'm just going to replace them and continually run them on this bike because they are such a good combination of performing well off-road. I've been in sand, dirt, gravel, mud, crud, Elmer Fudd, and it handled it perfectly. And then on-road is kind of where I think it really shines because it wears very slow for road riding, and you can also lean over really far on that sidewall. Even in the rain, you can lean over pretty far at a pretty fast rate of speed, and you're going to, I'm not telling you to go out there and knee drag like you're on a crotch rocket or anything, because you'll probably low side, but these Shinkos are lovely. They also wheelie very well. I'm not very good at wheelies. I'm still working on balance point wheelies. I can power wheelie like a son of a bitch, but I'm working on the proper throttle brake thing that you kids do all the time, and I'm getting better at it. As for the powertrain, we're talking about the motor, the controller, and the battery. This bike really does need a third power mode like the SR has, because in economy mode or eco, you are limiting the peak output to, I believe, 4 kilowatts of peak power, and then in sport, it's 15.8. Let's round up, say 16. Having said that, I've heard reviewers say that sport mode is choppy and you cannot modulate the throttle. We must have different bikes or a different tune or something, because you can see from some of my trail riding where I'm going like super slow on these tight, intricate trails that I'm probably not supposed to be on. And same thing when I take off from a standstill, if I don't want to break my neck with that acceleration like I usually do, if I just want to creep off the line, I can literally go 1 mile an hour in sport mode. So it is a very controllable, modulatable throttle. The SR had a very choppy, jerky throttle for a while, but then E-Ride released a tune, a follow-up update for it that fixed that, but the 3.0s never really had that issue as far as I know. Mine's always been buttery smooth on the throttle, which is good for wheelies. It's good for taking off. There is multiple aftermarket controller options popping up on screen here. Some of the popular ones. That is going to be the first powertrain upgrade I make, is the controller, considering E-Ride has a Bluetooth card or chip underneath the battery tray, but refuses to make good use of it. The SR allows you to tune the bike through a Bluetooth app. That has been a promised feature, says in parentheses on the website. It's going to happen for the 3.0. That feature is still not here, so I really would not patiently wait for that. If you want control over your bike, things like how much brake regen you have, how aggressive the throttle mapping is, and how much power you're putting out, get yourself an aftermarket controller. Stock battery, stock motor, I'm going to stick with those for a while. And as far as the actual powertrain, I really wish the E-Ride took a page out of Talaria's book with the gear drive system, where all you have is oil changes, but they're pretty damn infrequent. But instead you have a belt and a chain. The chain is very thick and robust. You should have no issues with that snapping or anything, but you do also have a belt. I've had no issues with mine, no rips, tears. I haven't even needed to tension or adjust mine, just run it as the good Lord intended. But if you want more durability at the sacrifice of even more noise, you can do a double chain drive conversion and be running a primary chain. The battery is a 72 volt, 50 amp hour, 3600 watt hour swappable lithium ion battery. It is hot swappable, but it's kind of heavy, so it would take you a second to muscle it out and pop a new one in there. But range is good, not great. It really does depend a lot on how you're riding the bike. I can usually get about 25 to 30 miles of zipping around on and off road spiritedly. I can squeeze a lot more out of it if I stay in eco mode and just cruise, but I'm never doing that because I'm not commuting on this thing. I'm ripping on this thing. The manufacturer's claimed range is, we know these are comical with these E-motos because these are best case scenario, ideal weather, no incline, and you're driving like a certified biatch. 64 miles at 25 miles an hour, or 100 miles if you are tiptoeing at 15 miles per hour. But if you're riding like a normal individual, then it's going to be about 25 to 30 miles. So as far as issues I've had with the bike, because there has been a few: broken battery latch. The metal part underneath the battery tray has snapped off just from general usage, so I need to buy a replacement for that. Here's the problem: replacement parts are always out of stock on the manufacturer's website and on third-party vendors like Charge Cycle Works and Rev Ride. Parts are always out of stock for this bike, so try not to break things if you can. This isn't an issue, but just something I was a little bit confused about. The 3-position switch for the key, the middle just turns on the battery. It doesn't turn on the USB charging port, so if you're trying to charge a phone or tablet or something, just turn it all the way on to the right. I was full throttle at about 60 miles an hour, and the bike completely cut power. Instead of going into the limp mode like it's supposed to, where it limits power at around 20% battery life, it just cut power completely. I had to pull off to the side of the road. The battery was beeping, but then once turning the bike off and turning it back on, it basically resets the brain of the bike, the BAC battery tender on board, and then it was fine. Anytime you have an issue with the E-Ride, the old IT fix, did you turn it off and turn it back on, works every time. Anytime the bike cuts out on me or beeps on me, hasn't been very many times, it's been like 2 or 3. Whenever that happens, just turn it off, turn it back on. I also washed the bike. I didn't use a pressure washer, but I used a hose, and I did put it in the jet function, and I guess I sprayed too much water up in the controller, so for about a day, my bike would cut off when riding it, and then flash me an E07 and E09 error on the screen, and I would have to turn the bike off, turn it back on, limp back to the house. I put a fan on the bike in my garage and let her drip dry for about 24 hours, and now she's a-okay. Along those lines, this is a crazy factoid I'm about to spit out at you. These little E-motos are pretty water resistant, where you can get them damn near submerged, overlaying a little clip from Seaboys with their E-Ride converted trike. That thing is in the water, and they dump that thing in a sack of rice and it works again. But you don't even really need to do that. You just let it kind of drip dry in your garage, give it a few days. Once the water comes out of the electrical components, usually your bike starts working again. That's not always the case, and I'm not telling you, hey, go soak your electronics, because it's always going to be okay. But about 90% of the time, you can soak the shit out of your electronics, and once they get dry, they start working again. I already mentioned the brake issue. I had no front brake for about 200 miles. I was using regen and rear brake, which is not safe at all, considering about 70% of your braking power is from the front of the bike. Really, your rear brake's there for skidding and riding wheelies to make sure you don't loop out, and to supplement the front brake. And then the biggest issue is the fact that I reported an issue via the proper channels for the warranty claim and never got a response, and that was over a month ago. As for the screen, I do like it. It is a little bit big and bulky, not only bezel wise on the side of the screen, just cosmetically ugly, but also if you crash, loop it in a wheelie, or smack it down on a trail, you could break that little screen in comparison to the Talaria's little handlebar side mount screen, which is much harder to break. But there is an aftermarket metal frame to reinforce the screen, and along those lines, I do like the screen. It gives you lots of information, including the operating temperature of the controller motor and battery, which does work in real time. Your speed, which is about 4 to 7 miles per hour off. It reads high. The faster you go, the more off it is. I did a GPS test. The top speed of the bike's about 59, 60 miles an hour, but the acceleration that they do claim is spot on the money. They say 0 to 30 in 2 seconds, and that's about right. I like the screen, but I'm not in love with it. I hope on the next version the bezels are smaller. Maybe it's a little bit more of a Talaria style screen. As for controls, this is definitely a weak part of the bike. Not only are they very plasticky and cheap feeling and looking, but also there isn't very much control. There isn't a manual regen brake, which is super unfortunate. That would save your pads and also put a little bit of juice back in the battery. Mostly just save your pads. You have 2 regen levels, which are not very strong. In the middle is regen off, to the left is regen 1, to the right is 2. It's basically very weak engine braking on a gas bike if you were to downshift, but in comparison to other E-motos on the market, it is very lackluster, and I wish it was more aggressive. Riding modes, I mentioned it during the Powertrain, but it needs a middle mode for sure, maybe 10 kilowatts or something, instead of jumping from 4 to 16. I don't like the horn and reverse being on the same toggle switch. I've had no issue hitting the horn, but the horn button should be like a big red, easy to find button in case a car cuts you off or something. I do love having a reverse gear. They did away with the turbo button, which nobody likes because it's simply silly, but did add a reverse gear, which is wonderful for backing out of a trail you've gone too far down or getting yourself unstuck. It does have plenty of torque to move you up a hill in reverse, but it doesn't go very fast. You have a max speed of about 3 miles an hour in reverse, as where other E-motos let you do like full speed in reverse basically. As far as aftermarket customization, there is options for suspension. I did talk about the Arma EXT, and there's several other options for forks and monoshock. And there's also a lot of controllers. There's a couple of motor upgrades. There is a couple of battery upgrades, popping them up on screen as I talk about them. But in comparison to the Surron market, there is jack shit. Luckily, there are converters and adapters for certain parts, like I mentioned, the seat and extended rear fender. As for value and verdict, this was my first E-moto, so I don't have a whole hell of a lot to compare it to other than the, ETM RTR, which I recently purchased. That's a different style of bike. It's a little pitter. The bike itself is absolutely phenomenal. If you want an E-moto to do a little bit of everything for you right out of the box, it can wheelie well. The suspension doesn't need an upgrade. The brakes don't need an upgrade. The powertrain doesn't need an upgrade. You're at almost 16 kilowatts. The ergonomics don't really need an upgrade. You've got grippy pegs, 2-inch rise bars, and a direct stem lock. So those are 3 upgrades that people usually put on their bikes to make them more comfortable. You've already got that. The tires, people usually upgrade to Shinkos. Comes with that out of the box. So I've treated the bike nice, and the bike has coincidentally treated me nice. You take good care of your gear, it's going to take good care of you. Now, if you see my left arm looking a little bit torn up compared to usual, the next video will be me going to the urgent care thinking that I re-broke my forearm. I'm just super fucked up. Crashed my ETM RTR. It's fine. The bike's fine. That's what's really important. 25 miles an hour, no brakes involved, fell into a rain rut, flipped over the handlebars, got ejected about 8 feet in front of the bike, 6 to 8 feet. I like saying 8. It's more dramatic. So that's in the next video. Make sure you subscribe for that. But this video, I'm sure, really tickled you in the nether regions. So it'd behoove you to subscribe. Basically, you'd be a big old goddamn idiot not to. If you like this kind of content, you'd probably want to see more of that kind of content in the near future. And I'll see you. Cheers right there on the microphone. That probably created a splendid sound for you. So as far as comparable competitors, there really is only one, because the Ventus One Plus is not. But I am seeing the Altis Sigma MX on sale for like $300-400 more expensive than the E-Ride. However, despite the fact that the Altis Sigma has substantially more power at 22 kilowatts of peak power, not 15.8, there's virtually no aftermarket support for the Altis Sigma, as where the E-Ride has some, not as much as the Surron, but it has some. And I do feel like the overall package is better with the E-Ride for the price, but I have not ridden the Altis Sigma, so I have no hands-on experience with that bike. But just from consuming so many reviews on YouTube, I feel like I have a pretty damn good general gist, a taste on the tip of my tongue, sweetheart, to be able to tell you that I would still have bought the E-Ride 3.0 as my first E-moto. Having said that, Altis, why don't you send me a Sigma so I can compare these bad boys side by side? I'll see you next time. Peace.